Welcome back to our second segment of Political Brew for this week. I'm Don Carrigan, sitting in for Pat Callahan, who is joining us this week as a panelist as we remember John Richardson, our much-loved colleague here on Political Brew and a longtime public servant for the state of Maine who passed away last week. We are joined by University of Southern Maine President Glenn Cummings, who, like John, was Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives. We're joined by Phil Harriman, of course, and by John Richardson Jr., John's son. And John, I will give you the floor to start with. We are all so sorry, as are so many people across Maine, for the loss of your dad. I know this is difficult, but you were telling me that he loved doing this.
John, I really appreciate it, on behalf of everybody here in our family. As I've told everybody on the call here, Dad really appreciated getting to do this program. He felt like it was a lot of fun to talk through both sides of every issue with the team here. And I think for the folks that were watching it, they realized that you could get along, the relationship that Phil and Dad had. You could get along and talk politics and leave it at the door and have a beer afterwards. So this was something he really enjoyed doing.
Why, as you grew up around it, why did he love politics so much?
I think everybody has talents, different talents, and you have to know who you are, Don. And I think he really had a good sense of who he was and how he could help. He was obviously a firefighter when he was much younger and more fit. I think he's still pretty fit up and, till this week here. But he really knew people. He cared about people deeply, and he had a strong desire to make things better for people. He was somebody who could bring people together when it came to getting things done. He liked accomplishing things, and he liked finding common sense solutions for folks. There are idealists that are out there. There are pragmatists in politics. I think he was more pragmatic and made progress as a result, being able to work across the aisle.
Thanks. Glenn Cummings, now president of the University of Southern Maine, but you were a politician for a while, and you sat with John, you succeeded him. What made him good at that job?
Well, I think that's the right question. First, I just want to say to John Jr. and to the Richardson family that I'm very sorry for the sudden loss. I can't imagine the amount of pain that you're in, and please know that many of us across the state are expressing our deep sorrows, and we wish the best for your family in this difficult time. He was an exceptionally skilled person, Don. He was very eloquent, very persuasive, and always full of energy. He liked, I think John Jr. said it well, he liked to bring people together. His best friend in the State House was Josh Tardy, who was the head of the minority party. And I kind of took that personally because I was the head of the majority party that John was part of. And I said, hey, how about, you and I go to dinner once in a while? But I think it speaks to the fact that he reached across the aisle. He found solutions with Josh Tardy and the Republican Party, and tried to move an agenda that all Mainers really wanted. That to me is the best statesman and politician that you could be. Very, very wonderful. Made me laugh many times. He was always in a hurry to get to the next thing, and he got a lot done in every day.
Thank you. And Phil, obviously you were in a different body. You were in the Senate, not the House, but you saw him in action.
Oh, I did, and he was working really hard. You could tell he had an agenda, but he had that unique ability that when he stopped and spoke to you, he was all in. He wasn't looking over your shoulder or past you or finding someone else to go talk to. He was all in, and he had this way of incrementally getting the job done that he wanted to get done, and he sprinkled it in with a little bit of humor, and it worked. And we need more John Richardsons today in public service, more than ever.
And Pat, you got to see John and Phil in action many, many times, and you know that people responded to that and to the fact that they were of very different points of view often, but got along just fine, and even once in a while agreed.
More often than you might think, too, because I think one of the things about John was he loved the game of politics. To some of us, it's kind of like a sport, and it can be a lot of fun to know the players and who's going to move up here and who's not going to. But more than that, he loved the work of public service. It was important to make sure that leaders are held accountable. And we would hear from viewers most of the time. Most viewers would say, "We love the way Phil and John can get along. They can agree without being disagree without being disagreeable." But there occasionally someone would write in and say, "Oh, he's just out there to blast Donald Trump. That's all I hear from him." Well, of course, he's a Democrat offering his opinions. He's sometimes and often going to disagree with President Trump. If that were all he had to offer, it wouldn't be of much value. But the fact is, he held his own party's feet to the fire just as much, publicly speaking. And Phil, I think you've seen that happen too. He was unabashedly a partisan. He was a supporter of Bernie Sanders 4 years ago, and we knew what his political leanings were and what he wanted out of government. But when they were falling short, he would say so. And I think that's important. That's a rare thing.
Glenn, I'd ask you, so Phil made the point, and some others have, that we need more across the aisle politics today than we have, and that John's style would be a welcome relief from some of today's politics. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think he had a spirit where he just naturally liked people, and he didn't ultimately let politics get in the way of that. You just enjoyed putting his hand out and meeting the next person. He enjoyed talking about people that he had met, and he took a lot of pride in, even though he was a little late to come to Maine to be a native, as he used to say, he got here as fast as he could, and he loved Maine people. And we would go around. We had a small business forum. We'd go around the state together. And he knew everybody in that room before I'd even gotten myself a seat. So I have to say, he really, I think it's one of the great statements about what we need today is we just need to start with, hey, can we work together? Can we find some common ground, and can we get things done? And he absolutely embodied that spirit, and he did it in a very fun and engaging way as well.
Well, if I could jump in, Glenn, too, I think that's important to realize that the great politicians, the ones who are good at building consensus and bringing people together, have a sense of humor, not just about other people, but about themselves. You look at Ronald Reagan or John Kennedy, they were people, they're going to make fun of themselves before anybody else gets to and get that out of the way. That's very engaging with people. They know that you're on their level. One of the things that's often said about John is he was at home wherever he went. Whatever group he was addressing or working with, he understood them. He could relate to them. And John could dish it out as well as take it when it came to needling. So that's important too.
I'm going to ask John Jr. to chime in on that briefly, since we're up against the clock as always. John, if you might be, what do you think of what Pat just said?
No, I think couldn't agree more. I mean, you just have to have a strong sense of self in life, just generally. And it doesn't matter whether you're a cop, a lawyer, a firefighter, politician, right? That if you are guided by making things better for people, you can have a fun time doing it and put people at ease and get real work done. I mean, some of my best memories are driving to all four corners of the state with him. And I remember we would, after soccer practice, would hop in the car and go, all the way out to Eastport, really, and end up having, meeting with four people. And that was it. That he worked, I think, about as hard as you could on behalf of people here to just make things better than when he found them.
Thank you all for taking the time to do this. As our time is short, we could say a lot more. Thank you all. And John, to you and your family, obviously from all of us, our deepest condolences. We're going to miss him. We know you will, and grateful for the service he gave to the state. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. And thanks to everybody on the call here.
Glad to do it. Thank you all for being part of this discussion this week. I'm Don Kerrigan. New CENTER Maine continues after this.